relationship, privately delivers some tough messages when he needs to. Minister of Defense Wardak, same kind of deal. So I think Obama is going to weigh the pros and cons of McChrystal's ability to lead the war effort. He's not going to worry as much about the political spin and about the conversations you and I may have about the perception of weakness or strength.
Colonel Macgregor.
Well, I don't know President Obama, but I think that it's a somewhat different situation. I think President Obama was effectively railroaded into the policy that he's adopted in Afghanistan. We had really one goal in Afghanistan after 2001, once we had driven al-Qaeda out, and that was to ensure that Afghanistan would not become a sanctuary for al-Qaeda again. That's a very straightforward mission. That doesn't require hundreds of thousands of troops. It doesn't require billions of dollars. That mission has been dramatically expanded into a nation-building operation, which is entirely unrealistic, with unattainable goals in a place that is not a nation-state, where the culture won't support it, the economy doesn't exist. And I think President Obama was very reluctant, but felt that he was given no other choice. Now he has an opportunity, and that's my point on removing McChrystal and putting someone new in and asking for a different assessment.
To let our listeners know, the meeting between the President and General McChrystal is over. There are no other details yet. I'm going to go to the phones now, 800-433-8850, to Lisa in Cass City, Michigan. Good morning, you're on the air.
Hi, Diane. I always enjoy listening to your show. Thanks for taking my call.
Thank you.
I have two comments, one as a parent and one as a former soldier. First of all, as a parent, and I think the psychology is the same here, I think good parents present a united front in front of the children and then have their disagreements about the raising of the children or whatever privately. And it makes me wonder if maybe the general did discuss these things with the president and got nowhere. I don't know, maybe your guest would have some insight into that. And another, as a former soldier, it was very clear as a soldier that you do not make statements disagreeing with your higher ups in the chain of command, like your guest said earlier, which makes me wonder, is he asking for this? Everybody knows that as a soldier. So how could he be making these statements unless he wanted there to be something to come of it? I don't know.
James Kitfield.
It raises an interesting point. It gets back to if you read that article, I do not see this as a purposeful shot across the bow from a field commander. It's quite the opposite. I think this was a lot of sort of liquor-infused free talk around a tight circle that made the huge mistake, in my opinion, of including a reporter there and letting this become public. Because when it becomes public, it becomes a huge problem. And so I think it's more that than like she said, parents have these discussions in private. So do field commanders. They have these discussions one-on-one with, in private, but they do not allow a culture to develop where these things get voiced and in a sort of boisterous way. I will make one point too, is that the reason I don't think this is a big shot across the bow on purpose is he's won almost every policy debate that sort of informed the story. When him and Biden and Vice President Biden disagreed on the strategy, McChrystal won. When he disagreed with Eikenberry on Karzai, McChrystal won. So he really has no bone to pick. He's won the battles with the policy, but apparently amongst his aides, it left a bitter taste with some of these fellows. And they are very free to criticize them. But really, he has no complaint because in most things, Obama's backed him up, which is what I imagine President Obama has recently said to him. Look, I backed you. It wasn't that popular with the base of my party. I went out on a limb for you. Why do I keep getting these reports that you're somehow off the reservation?
And you're listening to the Diane Rehm Show. Let's go now to Virginia Beach and to Marcy. Good morning. You're on the air.
I just wanted to say that I think that the problem is that this reporter is going to get his 5 minutes of fame. He has couched all of this controversy in the jargon of our popular culture, and that this is not the Stanley McCrystal that most people know, that most people have experience with. A lot of it was comments that were attributed to his aides, and the final thing being that, this guy was he was brought into the trust circle like in a team, and he shared every little bit of locker room conversation, and I think it was a betrayal. I think that when you're a part of a team, you don't come out and tell everybody everything that goes on in the locker room.
I wonder if this is a case of blaming the messenger.
Oh, I think so. I mean, again, we know what the difference is between background and on the record, off the record, so there's no excuse for this. I mean, it could have been made very clear what was or was not going to be printable. The other thing is, I really think that McCrystal is frustrated because, again, he's been there for several months. He's now discovered things are different from what he anticipated, from what he was told. The Russians said that they needed 600,000 men just to close the border between Pakistan and Afghanistan. They ultimately said this is ridiculous because even if we do it and we pour more troops inside the country, we're not going to change it. It's too resistant to change. I think McCrystal's figured these things out, and I think a lot of this amounted to expressions of frustration. But the point is, and I think the caller is right about that, he needed to give that assessment in private to the president. And that's what I think the president desperately needs now. He needs an honest, objective assessment that meets the strategic needs of the United States, not this neocon, let's expand the war solution.
All right, to Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and to Dale. Good morning. Go right ahead.
Yes, good morning. I love your show. I've been listening for years, and thank you for taking my call.
Thank you.
I have to say I disagree with your guess. I think General McCrystal has been around long enough that he knew this was going to get out, and I think he's frustrated because you haven't talked about the diplomatic side, but he's trying to do a military mission, and the diplomatic side isn't progressing ahead. And he also asked for troops, and I think the guest just said frustration has built up within him. And this is, he knew his time was up because he couldn't do it anymore, and he just let himself go. He just said what was on his mind.
That's really an interesting perspective, Michael.
Well, I certainly would agree with the caller and with Doug and a couple others who have said that McCrystal is under a lot of stress. But I do not agree that he thinks he's in a losing effort. I think that the war has been difficult. I think James Kitfield summed it up well, saying we're not at a point where we would have perhaps hoped to be by now. But nonetheless, I have not detected in private or in public any comments from McCrystal that lead me to think that he's actually begun to give up on the war effort. Quite the contrary.
James?
I totally agree with that. And this is, I mean, to sort of do this sort of political career suicide would not be the way, if you know the ethos of the senior ranks of the U.S. military, I mean, this guy is focused on trying to turn this thing around. He does not want to be the guy infamous for, having screwed the pooch, if you will. So no way do I think that he's purposely, gotten so frustrated that this was an act of political career suicide. I just don't see
James, you mentioned that when Vice President Biden and General McCrystal were at odds, the president went with General McCrystal. Why then these comments about Vice President Biden?
Well, because I think they understand that, within the camp, and there are two different camps in the Obama administration about how to prosecute the war, and Doug would probably represent the camp that says this is not winnable, let's get out. There's the other camp who says we can do this, just give us the resource to do it. Biden would clearly be in the camp that says, we need to wind this down. Karzai can't be trusted. The government will never, hold up its end in a counterinsurgency campaign. Let's minimize, and get out. And Biden recently said, in 2011 summer, watch, there'll be large numbers of U.S. troops will be heading the way out. The military hates to hear that. So there's still some residual dislike among McChrystal's staff about Vice President Biden and those who side with that. Also with Eikenberry, who has a terrible relationship with the Karzai, who also doesn't think the Karzai government can be trusted here. General McChrystal, who has the best relationship with the Karzai, doesn't see a whole lot of other opportunities or other ways to go with that. So, there is this divide, and we're starting to see a little fracture here.
And when we come back, more of your calls, comments. I look forward to hearing from you.
National broadcast of the Diane Rehm Show is made possible in part by the George